Hey there, it's Michelle Theberge of themindfulartist.com and michelletheberge.com, and today I have 5 tips for you on saving money on your painting supplies. So first, let's talk about surfaces. And by the way, most of these are more geared towards a beginning painter, but I think some of them might apply for those of you who've been painting a bit longer. The key idea is to paint as much as possible, so we're going to try and save you money so you can do more painting. So traditionally, people paint on a stretched canvas, and you can buy them already prepared at the art supply store. This generally tends to be your most expensive option, so I'm going to give you some alternatives to that. What I often suggest that's super easy and ready to go is canvas board. So that is canvas stretched over cardboard, and you can buy these in a bunch of different sizes at art supply stores, and they're ready to go. Another really much more affordable alternative is to use cardboard. So you can prime cardboard with a gesso, and I'll link a video on gessoing and different types of gesso. Here, I think I did a video on that. I know I did some stuff about surfaces. Anyway, I'll link something about that. If not, I better make it for you guys, right? I have to make you a video on gessoing and priming. So we've got this. The other alternative is to go to a lumber yard, and you can sometimes find a scrap bin there and find all kinds of great scraps. Or if you know someone who works with wood, or there's a wood shop in your area, sometimes you can get scraps. Usually they're on the smaller side. If you're actually buying wood to paint on, then you might want to try like a masonite board or MDF, medium density fiber board, to paint on, or plywood with a veneer on it. I used to use a birch veneer. Those aren't super affordable, so I'm more trying to find you things that are just around and available. Another alternative is to go to an art supply store and buy heavyweight 100% rag paper. Rag is 100% cotton paper, and you can paint on that. You also will probably want to put the primer on there, the gesso primer. So it takes a little extra time, but it is way more affordable, and you can do a whole batch at once. So the second thing is paint. Now, there are student grade paints, and there are some good ones and not as good ones. So I did a video called 4 types of acrylic paint and how to figure out which is best for you. And I did address student grade paint there in a little bit more detail. So normally I do not like to recommend brands, but again, I know the frustration of a beginning student and how hard it is to figure out what to get. So I'm gonna recommend 2 brands that I have personally used and had decent experience with. I have noticed that some student grade paints are so watered down or so low in pigment that it'll just be really frustrating, and I don't want you to have to go through that. So the kind I've used most in my classrooms is the Liquitex Basics, because you get such a large quantity, and so everyone could really be generous with the paint. And I think that's really important when you're painting, is to not be worried about the cost and how much you're using. Winsor Newton also makes Galleria, which is another economy student grade paint, and that is also decently pigmented and has a nice consistency. So both of these are options for those of you who want a more budget paint before you move into the professional color, which will be more heavily pigmented. Then next, let's talk about brushes. So I do have a whole video on different types of brushes that I'm going to link here. I say in that video, and I stand by it, is that if there's anywhere you're going to spend your money on brushes, because I can't tell you how many times I was walking around a classroom, came around to one of my students who was just extremely frustrated and thought it was them, and it was really their brush. Some of those less expensive brushes, the bristles will like splay out in all directions. You can't control the mark, or they won't make a point when you need to make a line. They just don't hold paint well. They don't have good snap or spring. There's a lot of minuses to cheap brushes. Again, there's always a cheap brush that'll work great for whatever certain textures or backgrounds. So I don't want to say anything completely across the board, but in general, if you want to have a little more control with your brush, you're going to want to invest in a little bit better grade of brush. I think I might have in that video suggested some brushes. It's helpful sometimes to have a starter kit because there's so many different types of brushes out there. I'll try and link some in this video below if you're just starting out and you're not sure what brushes to get, some kind of reasonably priced but decent quality brushes for you. Then let's talk about palettes. So a lot of times students will end up with one of these disposable palettes. And you will see me using them in my tutorial videos simply because they're easy, they show up well on camera, and I can do multiple takes or clean them and kind of make them look the same. So that said, it's not my favorite because it is a disposable product. And so there's the impact on the environment when we're constantly using and throwing out paper, and the fact that it costs more too. So I have my favorite palette, which I talk about in another video, is the Butcher Tray palette. This is an enamel covered metal tray. And these work really well. They can be used over and over and over again. You can cover them with like a Ziploc bag and spray it with water and keep them fresh for multiple uses. So it's helpful for saving the paint. It's helpful for saving the environment because you're not throwing stuff out. But another alternative that I remember my art teacher in high school, Mr. Walt Bartman of Bethesda, Maryland, used to have us do when we either forgot our palettes or we didn't have a palette, is he had a stack of old magazines and we just squirt our paint out and mix it on the magazine. That works for short painting sessions. It's not great for keeping or saving paint. And if you're using acrylic, especially, the water tends to be absorbed into the paper and it dries out a lot faster. But hey, if you're on a budget and you just need to paint, grab an old magazine. That could be a temporary palette. Another alternative is, and this is one of my favorites, especially for those of you teachers. Now this is also a disposable, but if you're trying to kit out 30 students in a room and you're on a budget, this freezer paper is essentially the same paper as you get in this pad form. It's just a whole heck of a lot cheaper. They don't sell it at every single grocery store. I will try and find a link and link it for you, but if you shop at some of the bigger stores, ask for freezer paper and they should have it. That works really well. And I would just tape it onto a sturdy piece of cardboard and then you have a nice affordable palette. So lastly, let's talk about bargain shopping. So point number 5 is how can you get your beautiful, wonderful products at a discount? Well, number 1 is the sales. And in particular, most art supply stores will have back to school sales, significant discounts at the beginning of the school year. So if you can save up and buy things at that time and shop early for the best selection, that's one option for you. The other thing is, of course, coupons. You can get on different stores have coupons or they have coupon apps. And so you can usually get something like a 20% off coupon for one item, and then you buy something and then they'll generate another coupon and then you go buy it and things like that. Well, anyway, you can kind of work that system. If you're a bargain shopper, you know what I'm talking about. Then there's another alternative that I had never thought about until I was about to make this video. And I was like, eBay, ding ding. Because I buy a lot of my stuff on eBay. I bought this sweater on eBay. I bought these pants on eBay. I'm very into bargain shopping, buying secondhand, again, to be have a lighter impact on the planet. Well, hey, they had a bunch of really great paint at significant discounts on eBay. Remember to buy from sellers who have a good rating because you know that they're not doing knockoffs. But I think it's pretty, I could see that those were the actual brands that I was looking at. I'm not as concerned on that. But anyway, if you're not familiar with shopping on eBay, it's good to only shop where they will allow returns and where a rating is, I don't know, some eBay shoppers, I would say like 97% and higher is a good eBay rating. Anyway, so then there's also garage sales, estate sales. Sometimes you can find materials that aren't used or gently used at places like that. I have very rarely seen art supplies at charity shops or thrift stores. So that's not the best option, but I do have some shops here in the San Francisco Bay Area that I shop at for art supplies. And if you're in a larger urban area, you may have something like what we have here in San Francisco. We have something called Scrap, where they have not only art supplies, but all kinds of cool, wacky stuff that you can do crafts and art with, just weird discarded items. And there's in the East Bay, there's the East Bay Depot for creative reuse. And that's actually where if I have art materials that I don't need or use, I will donate to those places. And so you can get some good deals there. Some people will ask me about painting with house paint, and I'm of a couple of minds on that. So you can sometimes get, you know, like old sample colors or kind of cool colors. First of all, you won't have the like heavily pigmented colors of an artist. Usually they're, you know, more pastels. But hey, if that's your thing and you want to try it, I would say you give it a go. See how that works. It's not really meant for long-term survival of the painting. I mean, houses and interiors, exteriors are meant to be painted every, you know, 7 to 10 or 12 years. So they're not meant to last hundreds, maybe thousands of years like art materials are tested and designed for. But again, if it helps you paint, that's the whole gist of this video, is to just get you painting. And that's the most important thing. Paint as much as you can. And if you need to cut corners on your art supplies, I hope some of these tips helped you. All right, have a great creative week, and I'll see you on the next video. Like it if you liked it, if this was helpful, and leave your comments on anything that you have found that is ways to cut corners and save money on your art supplies. See you next time.